All right. Hi, everyone. I'm here with Linda Cheung. She's the founder and creative director at Before It's Too Late. And we're going to talk all things climate and behavior change and activism. So welcome, Linda.
Hi, Roshen.
Well, I'd love for you to start by just telling me a little bit about your organization and why you founded it and kind of broad strokes of like the sector it's in.
Okay, so I founded my nonprofit organization Before It's Too Late in my second year at MIT Sloan Business School. So that was like 4 or 5 years ago now. And after I graduated, I moved to Miami to launch it as a real nonprofit, 501c3 registered. And I chose Miami because it is ground zero for climate change here in the United States. And I wanted to work on this issue here in this country, where there's real impacts to be felt very soon with sea level rise and increasing hurricanes and migrations from climate change, and different ecosystems that are at jeopardy. For instance, like the Florida Reef, which is the third largest coral reef in the world. So Before It's Too Late basically looks at this issue of climate change, which will require radical decarbonization of the world. And in order to do so, we need cultural change. We need a change of paradigms in terms of the way we relate with our world, how we build and integrate sustainability into everything, and the values that we have in how we measure success. And so we approach that piece of the puzzle, which is how do we try to ignite some of that cultural change within our society, within the people, everyday people, to not only be better educated about environmental issues, but also want to be part of that change. And so we use the tools of art as our main tool, and then art, technology, education, to really think about that piece, the cultural change, the education and the cultural change that would be required in order to decarbonize the world. And so we focus a lot of our work here in Florida. And some of the projects that have formed and that taken off are the murals, like public murals. And in general, we get hit up for different sort of like, how do we use public art as a way to communicate some of these environmental issues? And then also get involved with the schools a lot with educational programs.
Great. Yeah, I'd love to get a little bit more into those projects. And before we do, just maybe a little bit more background about how you chose this as the way to tackle climate change issues and how you came to kind of this type of approach or solution.
Yeah. So I would say like about 6 or 7 years ago, while I was still working in corporate, like marketing and finance in New York City, I kind of decided, hey, I really want to change my career and actually work on something that I think like is a serious societal problem. And as I looked into the different issues, I started looking more into climate change, and I became quite shocked at how bad it was. I knew there was climate change, but I didn't really know how bad it was until I really started delving into it, like how little time we actually had to try to solve this huge issue and how much it was affected everything else. It's like a systemic issue. So then at first, I thought, all right, let me get into it from the let's get into like the finance and business development side of solving this problem, because that was my background. And if the issue is that we're burning too much fossil fuels and most of our energy produced to power everything in this world is fossil fuels, then let's try to speed up that transition to renewable energy. And so I went into that at first, into like renewable energy and financing and business development. Did that for a couple of years, and then kind of had this second sort of like awakening or epiphany, like, dang, like it's more than this. It's a whole it's a whole mindset, and it's a whole way of how businesses today have that pressure to have to conduct business in a certain way, which requires shorter term profits. As I looked into it more, I thought, I started interviewing people who worked in the field, like people either from the educational side or policy side or nonprofit side. And I started hearing the same stories again and again of like, it's the biggest issue is communication. The biggest issue is that we lack social will to change, political will to change. We have all the solutions already. We know what to do. We have the ideas for policies that would work, like carbon price, the technologies that would work. But we're not having adoption of it, and we're not feeling the urgency of it. And that comes from really both like the leadership not yet feeling that will or urgency to change, but in order for them to feel that pressure to change, the public, the general public also needs to be on board. They need to be educated. They need to, and yeah, there's a lot of nonprofits working on this piece. They're working really hard to educate, and yet, and I do think we are making progress. Like you see that there's more people who are now aware of climate change, and it became a big topic in that last presidential election with a climate change town hall, and the youth, movement that's taken off. And we've had the largest climate strikes, and they're growing in number. And so there is progress. But you can look at like, so I basically said like, all right, I want to be part of that, the social science aspect of this. This is a really tricky piece, and how can I add to this with my own approach? And I think I'm not the solution. There is so many people, and we all need to be part of the solution. And that piece is just how, I guess the piece that I was struggling with too is how can you bring more people who are outside of the choir in to understand? Because you keep going to these climate change events and you see the same people again and again.
Yeah. And just for folks who might be newer to it, you mentioned like there's obviously a lot of things we have to do to decarbonize. Can you paint that landscape a little bit of understanding like what are all the pieces we need to work on?
Yeah. So the most talked about and obvious is where do we get our energy from? We currently worldwide get it from like 80 to 90% fossil fuels. And we use energy for electricity, but also for transportation is a big one. So, most cars is gas fueled, planes, and so there's that energy piece for electricity and transportation. Then you've got agriculture, like how we produce our food. Right now, like there are new regenerative agricultural methods that are much better for reducing emissions. But right now with like mass monoculture and especially the animal industry, the methods that are being used produce a lot of waste and a lot of methane emissions, for instance, which methane is a very potent greenhouse gas. And then products, how we create our products are different sort of industries and manufacturing industries. All those industries currently also emit a lot. And we have to look at how we produce all our products and create like a more sustainable supply chain from start to finish. And even looking at circular economy, which is like right now, most companies, product-based companies, think only about like once it's out the door, it's not their problem anymore. But really, you got to think about how often do people replace that, and how do they get rid of the waste? Yeah, exactly. Throw away their products. And then there's the buildings industry, which we are rapidly urbanizing and growing, and buildings are getting built, and we consume a lot of our energy in the buildings. So that's why you have this whole like green building movement as well, with LEED certification, which is just that like, all right, like one big change would be changing the lighting from incandescent to LED, and that makes a huge difference. Another one would be having like windows that don't, that retain heat better. And so that's a whole field. And so it's really like, I think of it as everything we because like we live on this planet, everything we use obviously comes from this planet, and everything we then finished using goes back to this planet. So it's like intricately involved, connected with everything.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to talk a little bit about some of your projects that you started to mention. Dive into some of the highlights and programs that you're working on right now.
Yeah. So I'd say two big types of projects I'm working on now are augmented reality murals about the environment and public art in general for that. And the second one is the Earth Week Challenge.
Okay.
So augmented reality murals. So we currently are working on this cool project with the Miami-Dade public school system, where we want to launch a series of augmented reality murals that highlight the UN Sustainability Development Goals. There's 17 of them. And we're currently working, about to launch the first mural in the South Point Elementary School in Miami Beach,
Okay.
in which we engaged a group of students from different like elementary school and high schools within the Miami-Dade public school system, to be part of the process of designing and creating this mural. So we have students who are like learning Unity programming, for instance, helping with the AR programming aspect of it, or 3D art, actually creating the animals that will be highlighted in it. And some of the younger kids, they're using tilt brush to create the 3D like coral reef. And then we have even younger kids that are involved. Like we have older high school kids who are like the video production managers. And then these four like classes, like the second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, each of them were assigned one of the UN SDG goals. So we're highlighting 4 UN SDG goals in the mural. And these kids, they were the ones who voted on which ones to highlight. The main theme of this mural is life below water because it's in Miami Beach. But we're also highlighting goal number 13, which is climate action, and goal number 4, which is quality education, and goal number 15, I think it is, which is life on land. And each of these younger grades, they created like a whole skit around like, what does this goal mean for you? And we, produce, the high school kids are the ones filming and producing those videos, which will be highlighted in this mural.
It's like a whole organization you got going on there, the managers.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Cool. It's like, because they can feel like this was us, we created this mural, and they have, and we even have like 2 of the faces on this mural are going to be actual students who go to this school. So that's a really cool project. And we want to continue to make murals within the series across the whole school district, and then have like one app. So it'll be a mural series in one app to access all of them, in which you would collect the different icons from the UN SDG goals by going to a mural.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there like, so this is for the public, like anyone can access these murals and go through the app. Are there certain actions you're hoping people take after they interact with the art, or what's the behavioral kind of element piece of interaction?
Yeah, so for each of the murals in our series, we always have the same question at the very end. When you exit the app, we say, hey, we're doing this as part of a series of murals for climate awakening, and and in order for us to be part of the movement, we have to be ready to make a choice. So like you have to choose between make no change or be the change. And you click, and if you click make no change, you just get exited out of the app, but if you click be the change, we take you to our 7-day challenge, which is the second project I told you about, Earth Week Challenge.
Yeah.
Basically, I created this whole Earth Week Challenge because I'm like, how do you help people tackle this huge problem of sustainability and all the types of actions you take? How do you help them understand the types of actions they can take to help out and integrate that as habit? And so basically we're saying, all right, well, if you want to be the change, take this challenge and learn how to become sustainable in your own life.
Yeah.
So I guess, would you like me to talk about the Earth Week Challenge?
Well, yeah, maybe give an example of 1 or 2 of the days or what they're focused on.
Yeah. So it's basically a 7-day challenge, and every day of the week is a different focus on a different theme and action they can take. So the first 4 days are really involving your individual actions. So you've got Meatless Monday, which is about like the type of food you consume. And Transportation Tuesday is like taking greener modes of transportation. And Water Wednesday is about conserving water and learning about protecting your water, clean water rights. And then Trashy Thursday is about minimizing your waste. And the R's, which is like reduce, refuse, reuse, recycle, repair, rot. And then Friday and Saturday is about systems change. So Friday is
Mm.
Civic Friday, and Saturday is Shop Green Saturday, which is about the types of businesses you support.
Mm.
Um, and that's like supporting more local business, more like conscious businesses. And then Sunday is Nature Sunday, which is about spending time in nature and having
Mm.
that connection to nature.
And is the hope that, because you'd mentioned in the beginning about political will and leadership, is the hope that you're instilling both education and inspiration for folks to go on to do broader systems change? Because I like how it kind of ends in the more systems change pieces.
Yeah, like I recognize, yes, that is the hope. And I recognize that everyone's different, and will want to, maybe not everyone's calling in life is to become an environmentalist.
Sure.
But by doing this, you kind of realize, well, these are the ways that I could contribute. And then you can kind of decide like how much do I want to be? Because, you could just be a sustainable person in your own life and do your bit to educate your friends and family around you. But maybe you're not like an activist, or, and that's fine. But one of the things I like to talk about is like just this ripple effect of your ability to, as an individual, really be part of the movement. And,
Mhm.
you've got like your inner circle, which is just you. Then you've got your immediate like family and closest friends. And then you've got whatever organization you spend a big part of your time in, like maybe it's your school or the company you work at.
Mhm.
Then you've got your local community. Then you've got your even bigger, like maybe you want to get involved in state or government, federal government or international type work.
Mhm.
Um, so I do believe like, some people say like, the more important thing is systems change. We need policy change because that's scalable. You
Mm.
need big companies too. But I actually think that it's not like you can only have one or the other. Like, oh, let's only focus on grassroots or
Mhm.
let's only focus on policy. I think both are absolutely necessary and dependent on each other.
Mhm.
And you just need different people as part of the movement, working on the thing they can best contribute and want to work on.
Yeah, they're like little piece of the pie. Um,
Yeah.
what's like one surprising thing you've learned since starting your organization?
Mm. Um, I guess like I'm constantly surprised by how little people know about this topic.
Mm.
I'm like, I'm communicating it constantly and I'm bored hearing myself.
Yeah.
Like, and I would think, oh, like maybe this is boring for someone to hear, but then I'm reminded when I meet a new group, well, actually, no, for a lot of people, this is new information
Mhm.
still. So I'm always reminding myself, this is still new information. And how can I keep the message to its core and be simple? Because I often want to go and be like, let's talk about this thing out here, but it's like, no, let's stick to the basics and the core. And so whenever I do like public art and stuff, I really try hard not to communicate too much
Right.
and just stick to the most important, essential
Yeah.
core.
Yeah. What about also just, I mean, starting an organization is hard no matter what. How has it been like during the pandemic and like, yeah, do you have a team? Like, what does the organization look like?
Yeah, so I've definitely had to take a different approach to nonprofit. And okay, so I'll answer the team thing first. So I'm the only like full-time person, and I work with independent contractors. Well, I independently contract people, but I do have like a long-standing my tech team. I have like 6 members in my tech team: a 3D artist, motion graphics, a UX UI guy, and two programmers, and then myself as creative director. And we consistently work on all the projects,
Mhm.
but I basically hire them on a project to project basis. And then I like to work with like different muralists and artists.
Mhm.
So we're a super lean team, and I've had to be kind of like, I would say, of course, isn't it like the story for most organization and business leaders that finance is the biggest challenge, right? Like I can do all these things I want to do, but how do you finance it?
Mm.
And capacity. I always feel like my capacity, even if I'm running at my best, like most efficient and productive self, I'm still the greatest limiting factor on my organizations, because I'm the person who whatever leads it and spend my full time on it. So it can only achieve as much as I can achieve, basically. So I feel frustrated about that sometimes. Like I wish, and one of my goals is to actually be able to hire like a small staff to work on this full time,
Mhm.
and have someone who's like my like program, like second right hand person,
Mhm.
someone who gets it, like has the same vision as me and is just as capable and talented in their own ways. That'd be exciting for me. Um, so I would say financing, I've had to take a different approach because, when I first got into nonprofit, a lot of people gave me like advice from the nonprofit world, like, oh, you should apply to these grants or get these connections with these foundations or whatever. And I tried to do some of that stuff in the beginning and I really didn't like it. Like, I'm just not a grant writer. I do not like spending all this time and energy on trying to raise money and grants. I felt like I was taking, like, the reason why I got into this was to do the work,
Mhm.
and it was taking so much of my energy away from that actual work that now I have a different approach. And even though we're nonprofit, we're kind of like a studio. And
Mm.
so now that we've developed a bit of a, I guess, reputation for doing these augmented reality murals, I do get reached out to by many different people saying, hey, I want one, I want one. And so now I say, all right, if you want one, these are what you need to provide me. You need to provide me a wall, the funding for it, and like, the specs. Like we need to agree on the
Right.
specs. Like
Right.
what's the message? What's the timeline? And then I provide the work. Like my
Right.
team will create this thing. And so that model has worked out for me.
Mhm.
I'm sure it limits me in some way where I could be perhaps more scaled and more do greater impact if I was, actually raise some operating budget, like a larger operating, but I have like a tiny little one.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's more of the kind of earned income model in the nonprofit
Yeah.
world. Yeah, where you have more control and, like, to your point, you're not spending as much time, chasing the grants and stuff. And maybe at some point that'll make sense. But right
Yeah.
now it seems like it works. Yeah, super interesting. Thanks for sharing. Well, I'm wondering if there are also just I know on your website you'd mentioned like this partnership with MIT and other research institutions. What does that look like? Is that um, partnering with them on kind of implementing the research they're putting out in your projects, or or something else?
So I was part of the MIT Sloan Sustainability Certificate Program.
Mm.
So they have and actually Biddle was like seed funded from that, and I had an independent and I've co-founded it with two of my classmates in the same sustainability certification program.
Okay.
It's called the MIT Sloan Sustainability Initiative. And so that first
By the way,
year,
I have to pause because BIDL is like the greatest acronym for an organization. I just realized it. Yeah.
before it's too late.
Yeah, that's great.
Biddle. Yeah, no, I just
Sorry,
like
keep
it.
going.
Biddle. I
Yeah.
mean, although people confuse it sometimes for Bitly, the link
Mm,
shortener.
yeah. Yeah.
um, so let's see. So because of that, I have this like relationship with that group.
Right.
Uh-huh. And so they like to stay in touch with. Plus, like they don't have that many people out here in Miami, from MIT Sloan or MIT even. So sometimes the school likes to be in touch with me because they see that I'm doing cool things out here. So I've worked with them like a couple years ago. They hosted their annual board, like sustainability initiative board conference here, and I actually organized it for them.
Mm.
And of last year, I was actually working with them on their En-ROADS climate simulation model, which by the way is really awesome. So they have a think tank, a nonprofit organization that kind of spun out of that same group. So I'm kind of a spin out nonprofit. So there's another spin out nonprofit called Climate Interactive. And they basically created this really powerful simulation model tool that projects out to 2100. And it's basically puts, this question in your hand, like, how do we try to limit global warming to less than 2 degrees or less than 1.5 degrees? These are the goals that we have, with the Paris Agreement. These are the global goals. right now we're on a trajectory to exceed like 3.5 degrees be warming by the end of the century, even with all the actions that we've taken so far. So we're not yet taking enough action to be under 2 degrees.
Mhm.
In this simulation model, you can Google En-ROADS, EN-ROADS,
Okay.
simulation model, and it's free for anyone to access. And you can just basically, you have all the levers. You know, you asked me before, what are the solutions for decarbonizing society? Well, this puts like, there's 18 levers right here, all the major ways to decarbonize society. And if you push it and see how much do we reduce deforestation, how much, you know, do we try to increase energy efficiency in the buildings and industry sectors. So you do that, and then you see what that does to the projections of the greenhouse gas emissions into the end of the century, and if we're able to bring that curve down into less than 2 degrees. So yeah, I do like to be involved and stay in touch with them, and have a good relationship with that sustainability initiative department.
Great. Yeah, we'll definitely post a link for people to be able to see that. And just to kind of wrap on a more community oriented note, I mean, you do so much work with, you know, a variety of people, whether it's artists to schools and students. What have you seen as like, you know, some of the best approaches that have worked to like engage the community? And to your point, you know, bringing more people into the choir. Are there things that you've seen that help people kind of onboard and come into the community?
I think it's really trying to meet people where they are, and not having such high expectations, because, you know, like I can care about this issue a lot and sometimes feel disappointed in people for not caring as much, but
Right.
that's not really effective. Um, so I just have to be understanding, I think, of where they are. And part of the reason why I do these different tools like art and public murals is because people are open to looking at art, and um, it's like taking this big, you know, heavy topic and then making it maybe more interesting or beautiful or um, uh, you know, or emotional or something. And the thing is, like, they're usually more open to receiving it in that format, like rather than having a serious conversation. And so I guess like that has always been my challenge or mission or goal, is how can I find ways to get more people engaged by making it more emotional, something they can feel or connect to, or making it more interesting.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, or and relating it more on a personal level, or even like giving them just a piece, just what they need, like not trying to inundate them with all the information. And like even the Earth Week challenge is like, I'm only asking you to take 1 week of your
One
life.
thing. Yeah. Or yeah, 1 week,
Yeah,
one step a day. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
exactly.
it's interesting because you know, in the design field, as Exygy, as a, you know, design professionals,
Yeah.
we also use some of the same principles, right? About like thinking about behavior design and how you make it someone easy for someone to do something and things like that, like meet them where they are, getting
Yeah,
them one step at a time and things like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And I do think like for a lot of people, they like to be told this is what you need to do. So giving them in like a almost like a here, plug and play, like here's what you need, do this thing first, do that thing, or I just need you to do this. This could
Mhm.
really help. Rather than this is a huge issue, we need to do
A
everything, you know,
systemic
like
issue that you need to solve
yeah,
tomorrow. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So
Well, I'd love to end on just any links or resources. You know, you mentioned, was it called Inroads, the
yeah.
tool? Yeah, Inroads already. And if there are any other tools for design and technology in the climate sector, as well as how do people find you and follow your work?
Yeah. So you can go to my website. My website is before it's too late.earth, or the shorter way to get there is bitl.earth will also direct you there. And my Instagram is also bitl.earth.
Okay.
And then the Earth Week Challenge is on that website. It's also earthweekchallenge.org. And then Google En-ROADS. So those are the things I'd like to leave you with.
Great. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me.
Yeah, thanks, Roshen.